Hey everybody, welcome back to the land of low friction, and we are ripping into the end of life review for the Silca Ellectrico Micro electric pump. This one will be, I think, a little bit of fun because, there's a reasonable price premium for this pump. It's at the moment got a bit of a gap as being the most expensive mini electric pump in this category, and we really need to, have a look at its outright performance, longevity, and features versus a number of its key competitors in this same class, because I think there'll be some interesting bits to talk around there. Okay, so the main marketing claims, the ones that we're really going to be, double checking, the able to inflate 3 tires per charge, and that would be to the full sort of 72 psi. In my testing for a 28C equivalent, it was able to just exceed that, so that is a match. Yes, it is compact and ultralight at 111 grams, that's a match. This one really, in terms of the mini electric pumps in this sort of micro category under 150 grams, it sits a little bit in the middle. So we have, almost a separate performance category at around, for units at around 100 grams. So the AS2, the Flex Tail, another one that escapes my brain, the Thumper Nano. Compared to those, for that extra 10 grams of weight, you certainly did get a bit of a bump in performance, which will show some lovely interactive graphs on that shortly. However, at just a little bit of a step up in weight, such as for the Muck-Off AirMac Pro, the Cyclus AS2 Pro, they're around the sort of 125 gram mark. They have a significant performance and endurance bump again over this at 110 grams. So it's kind of in the middle there. So just worth noting that before we look at all the fun stuff. Also note that, a reasonably large talking point for this will be that it does not have a gauge. And Cyclus, especially with their AS2 Ultra, have certainly shown that getting a gauge in at an even smaller and lighter form factor is for sure possible, and that has even higher performance. So that's something that we will not be able to avoid an awkward discussion on later in this review. But not having a gauge, this one does include an automatic shutoff at 72 psi, so that your risk of dying if you're running road hookless is slightly less than is otherwise the case with running that system. Overall, that is probably a good thing. There are other, of the pumps in this category that don't have a gauge, that also don't have an automatic shutoff, such as like the Thumper Nano, which is well capable of pumping up to 120 psi. And so it is an increased potential that somebody may overinflate their road hookless for even more adventure. Sorry, I don't have time to faff with the actual Elettrico Micro sound effects in the background. Let's have a look at how it performs. The Elettrico Micro is the orange bar, currently second from the bottom. So as we start, this is the first inflation race to 70 psi. It is outperforming, even by the time we sort of get to the 20 psi mark, the others of around its weight, really the Cyclus AS2 from LEX and Genuine, the Thumper Nano and the Flex Tail Mini. We can see that the even lighter and smaller Ultra is hanging out next to it now. The slightly heavier ones are going ahead. As we go up in pressure, still holding on pretty good. It's a pretty close race. The heavier, more powerful units are starting to pull ahead now as the pressure goes up. But it's still doing pretty well. And getting to 70 psi, really not too far behind those right at the top of the table. All right, let's see how it goes on the third inflation, getting to 70 psi. We may start to see some of the other lighter units start to struggle, and potentially a bit more of a gap between the a little bit heavier and more powerful units inflating to 70 psi on the third round. Let's have a look. So it's doing pretty good. The Thumper Nano's trying to hold on strong as well. 10 grams lighter than the Micro. The Recon's also about 120 something grams. The Magic Shine Aero's the real heavyweight at the moment at just over 140 grams, and it is really using that extra size and weight for some extra oomph. Pretty tight battle between the Micro and the Nano. A couple of other lighter units are really starting to struggle, so the AS2 Genuine could not attain any more than 15 psi in round 3. Flextile Mini is pretty well stuck at 24. Cyclus from the AS2 from AliExpress stuck at 33. So the Arrows reached 70 psi. AS2 Pro and the Muck-Off AirMac Pro not far behind, getting to 70 psi. The Via Recon and I gotta say, it's just so impressive, Cyc Plus AS2 Ultra at 90 grams and with a gauge, really going at it with the Via Recon, which is a really good unit. That's at 70 psi. Recon gets there for round 3, and the Elettrico Micro is coming along. The Nano stopped at 50. So still pretty good, but definitely there's a bigger gap there by the time we get to the third round versus the slightly bigger, heavier units. Right, let's have a look at its overall performance. So how did it attain its total performance score that it attained? So I'll just zoom through the actual scored columns. It gets a 0 for display because it does not have one. You get 5 points if you have a display. It attained an 8 out of 10 for the maximum pressure it's happy to start, which was 71 psi, so basically it's max pressure that it could go up to. All pumps do say please don't start them at pressure, but it's really handy if they can. And it, despite the warning, it had no issues at all. It gets a 7 out of 10 for its inflation speed in round 1. However, that does drop down to a 3 out of 10 for its inflation speed in round 3, with it being 23 seconds lower to inflate to 70 psi on the third round versus the first round. Despite its small size and weight, it was very good at not overheating, so some pumps can get extremely hot. This gets an impressive 9 out of 10 for its thermal performance, which is, for its size and weight, very impressive. Endurance score was okay, so 3.6 rounds it managed to inflate to, so it couldn't get it to 70 psi, sort of got halfway there on round 4, gets a 6 out of 10. Its performance factor, so that is its inflation speed, factoring in its weight, it gets a 9.7. That's not out of 10, that is basically just a maths equation that calculates that out. I think the highest performing one is over 12, which is for the Cyc Plus Ultra. Factoring in its endurance for its weight, so its outright efficiency rating gets a 6. That is out of 10, so I do rate that to basically a maximum weight for the category of 150 grams, and they're scored on that rating, giving the Elettrico Micro a total score of 48.7, and basically it's costing $4.50 per performance point. The top performing unit at the moment, because it's just able to really nail all these performance categories with the extra size and horsepower that it has, it is the Magic Shine Aero with 74.6 points. Really, the pumps we're going to be comparing it mostly against are going to be the pumps that are around the Silca Ellectrico Micro's weight, perhaps a bit closer. So it's ranked a bit higher than the Thumper Nano. The Thumper Nano attained a total score of only 26.45. It's miles ahead, really, of the AS2, the genuine one, and the one from AliExpress, as well as the Flextile Mini. They are, sort of really struggling for points. So for the extra premium, you are well ahead of some of those other units around the 100 gram mark, and this one being only 10 grams heavier. Really, however, though, it's the one that's going to make the conversation a bit awkward. It is the AS2 Ultra, which is 20 grams lighter again at 90 grams and has a gauge and goes up to 120 psi. It was very similar in inflation speed in round 1, and it was faster in round 3, which is very impressive. It didn't have the same total endurance. It was just a little bit short in terms of total inflation output before the battery died, but despite that, yeah, it was a good bit quicker in round 3 in the end. So there is that. So the Ultra gets a higher performance factor, so its size and weight, its weight factoring its speed, and it gets a top 10 out of 10 rating for its efficiency factoring its total endurance versus its weight. It is one heck of a unit, and so it does score more impressively. Having a look at some fun graphs, I will not take up time going through all these myself today. You can have a look at the graphs, which pretty much put all of the stuff from that data table into a nice pretty format for you to peruse at your pleasure. What I really want to delve down into, and this will be a main focus as we get more test cycles done for more pumps, is performance degradation over time, or over the number of test cycles. And that gets quite interesting, so let's have a look. Right, so we're now at a stage where this is getting quite interesting. So we can see Magic Shine Aero and Cyclus 2 Pro are still at 0. I haven't got them to 50 cycles yet. The Via Recon I have, and that has only a 1% degradation in its performance versus new. So that is super impressive. The Muc-Off AirMac Pro at 50 cycles, only a 5.4% performance degradation. That is also very impressive. And the Elettrico Micro pretty close there at 7.5%. FlexStyle Mini 11.3%, which is getting not as great, especially in that it is already very slow, so more slowness is not optimal. And same really can be said for the AS2 Genuine. Both the Thumper Nano and the Cyclus AS2 from AliExpress are at 100% degradation because they did not make it to 50 cycles. In fact, they didn't really come close to making it to 50 cycles. Now, heartbreaking. The Elettrico Micro, that should be red. That died at 99 test cycles. We didn't get a performance degradation for 100. The seal went just at the start of that test. How about that? So I do record them every 25. So I've got that on the data table. We'll duck and have a look there. But whilst we're on the pretty graph phase, we can see that. So I haven't got these three to the 100 test cycle mark yet. The Muc-Off AirMac Pro is at only 8.7 performance degradation versus new after 100 cycles. That is really impressive. FlexStyle Mini getting extraordinarily painful to use by then, and same with the AS2 Genuine. In fact, I stopped the test or testing AS2 Genuine because it took its entire battery to get it to 70 psi once. Let's have a look at where the Silca was though at the 75th test cycle. Ducking back to the data table. I can't get that first column and the row to freeze pane. So yeah, after 50 cycles, its performance degradation was still pretty impressive in terms of there was not too much at 7.5%. However, at 75 cycles, there was a big drop there down to 20%. And then, we did not quite make it to 100. So far, the one that has been put through the most cycles and going strong is the Muc-Off AirMac Pro. It's just starting to die a little now. We are looking at, so at 100 cycles, it was only minus 8.7. After 125, it's at 13.6, and after 150 test cycles, so now it's getting up there at 18.6. But still, it's so far. That is, the durability king. It'll be very interesting if some of the other pumps as I really clock up the total cycles, how they go versus the Muc-Off AirMac Pro. But I gotta say, it is a unit. So how do we wrap all that up and decide whether or not we recommend this as your mini electric pump? Okay, so there were kind of two conversation paths, one pre the Cyclus AS2 Ultra and after. Pre the Ultra coming out, there could have sort of been a case to be made that, okay, if you really wanted a very, sort of up there with the smallest and lightest mini electric pumps, that you can get that still has actually good performance, so a notable enough performance bump above, say, the Cyclus AS2 or the Thumper Nano, and you're happy to pay those extra big bucks, then you can make a case for it. A little bit awkward in that at the end of the day, not that much bigger than the Elettrico Micro and not that much heavier is something like the AS2 Pro that gives you then a gauge, a decent bump again in inflation speed and endurance, and you can just do a lot with a gauge. You can obviously use it to top up your tyres before you head out because you've got an accurate gauge. You can use it at your cyclocross or mountain bike race to set the correct pressure you want, especially if you've ridden out there at a higher pressure, or just inflating to the pressure that's right for you in your puncture repair. A gauge really just is a wonderful thing to have. And they just really aren't that much bigger and heavier. So it was already, in my view, a pretty tough sell. But then, once the AS2 Ultra came out, it's really made things pretty tricky. It's not necessarily significantly smaller. Like, it is smaller, but all of them around that size are pretty darn small anyway. But it's 90 grams versus basically 110 or 111. So percentage-wise, that's a pretty decent drop in weight. And it has a gauge and pressure setting, which at 90 grams and its performance is amazing. And it's cheaper at 199 versus 219. So that it just makes it really, really tough. I as you know, really love Silca as a company. I think there needs to be, in all markets there are premium brands and there are more budget brands and then brands in the middle, and Silca is obviously a premium brand. They're kind of like your Mercedes-Benz versus, say, a Hyundai. So whilst there's a great place out there in the market for brands like, say, Triple B or Super B selling quality stuff at a really great price, there's also a call for your high-end stuff. But there comes a time where that line of paying that extra premium for the brand name, if it's too large, I think that people just will go, I don't know. I think in this case, something perhaps is going to call me over. So, unless we get a nasty surprise with the AS2 Ultra's longevity, at the moment, the Elettrico Micro at 219 versus the AS2 Ultra, which is smaller and lighter and has a gauge and has overall higher performance, it's a tough one. So apologies to Silca that I can't give them the, I guess a win in even its sort of 110 gram weight category. I think they either need to drop the price or they need to work on version 2, which has a pressure gauge to try to match the AS2 Ultra and remain competitive versus that product. Or I can't see what's going to draw one over to them versus this product. And I think where I remember with a bunch of these, I'll probably add a little personal recommendation on, because I think some mini pumps will draw me in a way that is just outside of their raw data and performance metrics. Such as, say, like the Via Recon, I think is a great pump. It's got such a great, sort of quality and feel. It's got the best gauge, really tactile buttons, awesome brass nozzle. I just really like that pump. It'd be very tempting to get that if I needed to replace my own personal mini pump, because I don't need to focus on the absolute smallest, lightest. Any of these sort of smaller size are really fine by me. Conversely, though, the AS2 Ultra is just such a compelling draw because it packs so much into just that such small and light form factor. The Markov AirMac is proving to be so reliable, just really trucking on so impressively for well over 100 test cycles, and that if you're someone who is using their electric mini pump to top up their tyres before they go for a ride, so you're putting it through a lot more use cycles than somebody who's only going to use a pump to fix a puncture repair, that could be a very strong consideration. So, there's all that. All right, last bit before this first part of the review is already too long is possible repairability. Right, so I've taken 5 pumps to basically their end of life now, and all 5 so far, the reason for them reaching end of life has been the piston seal. And that really obviously makes sense because the seal, it's not a metal part that's going to stand up to a lot of wear and tear. It's going to be a soft part, either rubber or nylon, and it's doing a huge amount of sliding friction every test cycle. It's a huge amount of times the piston seal is going up and down in a small cylinder. So pretty quickly, it is going to be literally clocking up the so literal millions of wear cycles inside the piston. And sooner or later, so either the seal wears sufficiently that there is so much air leaking past each piston stroke that it just takes like the entire battery to inflate to 70 psi once, or the seal has a complete failure and that's just it kaput. So being able to replace the piston seal, especially if one needs or wishes to, I think, for some this may be an important consideration. At the moment, there are none that I know of that have this option yet. Silca have confirmed that the spare parts will become available for their electric pumps, and that is supposed to include the piston seals. However, who's replacing them? So I highly doubt that this is something that most people will be able to do at home because all of the pumps are taken apart so far. It's not something I think many people would be that comfortable with doing, to replace a piston seal. So most likely it is going to be, you would send it back to the manufacturer or to an authorized service repair agent. They would replace the seal and send it back to you, in which case who's paying for that? Because if you're paying for it, the conversation could well be, look, for the cost of that, I'll just buy a new mini pump, just get a brand new one. If, for instance, Silca was to come out and say, hey, yep, seals are replaceable, and for 5 years they're covered by us. Send them to here. We do it. Send it back. Mega. For those that are using their pumps as top-ups all the time, so not just saving it for a punch repair, but they're actually putting them through constant work, being able to negate performance degradation from seal wear over time could potentially be a real selling point, especially if the pump has a gauge. So yeah, we got to wait and see. So Silca is the only one that have said parts will become available. Don't have a time yet. I have not been able to see from any other brand that any parts such as this will ever be available at all. Potentially Fumper, but that's, I would say, very far from confident at the moment. Right, we haven't really delved into yet the larger size pumps, but this is going to be a really important topic once we do get to the more sort of out of the micro category and into the mid category. So the next size up Silca, and the next size up Fumper, and there's a whole lot of units that once you get into sort of around the 150 plus 200 gram weight range, these pumps pack a lot of horsepower. They pretty much always have a gauge, and they are much more likely then to replace a floor pump as opposed to being used to carry in case of a puncture. So they're much more likely to be doing a lot more work than what these mini pumps are, which may only just be carried around for times of need. The issue is going to be largely very much the same. They will be revving a little bit less fast, so you'll be getting less wear of the seal, or we should get a lower wear rate of the seal in the larger size pumps than we do in these very fast revving little pumps. But still, obviously, if they're being used for workload, the seal wear issue and the performance degradation from that over time, it's going to be a real factor. And I don't think that we should be too accepting of just a status quo that after X amount of work, say on average, maybe it could be say around 100 cycles, we're throwing away a relatively expensive electric mini pump that's got a whole bunch of resources to make it, and that we're disposing of that's not amazing for the sake of a piston seal. That is always going to be the wear item. So we'll be looking for manufacturers to really make these available and replaceable. So that'll be a bit of a hot button issue down the track as we keep focusing on this. All right, I'm almost out of time. Let's see if I can smash through the teardown. Let's have a bit of a look inside the Elettrico Micro. Let's see if we can get that done before I've got to go. cycle 99. It just started playing up a little bit. All right. Good news is the Silca uses Torx head, which is much more fun than Phillips head. It does also use a lot more. Most mini pumps so far have only had 3 screws to undo. This has got 7. Let's see. Often we need to heat these with a heat gun to soften the Loctite, but being Torx, we might get away with it. Lovely. One. Ta-da! Okay. So I don't know which end it will slide out from. This is interesting. Take out that. Which one, which one? Will there be any glue? Looks like no glue. Pops off there. That looks all very lovely. It's a bit stuck because the seal's jammed. This end may be more fun. Oops. Didn't mean to turn you on. Now I can't turn you off. Alright, we have a fight. One moment. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so I mean they all look generally pretty similar. This is a slightly different looking motor to what we have seen so far. That's quite lovely there. We can see the no doubt neodymium magnets for the rotor around the innie stator. It does look like a lovely motor. We'll have to get this bung seal out so that we can do a bit of an RPM test. There's no way I've been able to dig it out just without taking the piston off, so we'll have to do that, which can be 50-50 if you can get these out without having to faff with the cylinder a little bit, but let's see. Maybe it's definitely got the biggest bearing so far. Okay. So you can probably see that, yeah, replacing seals overall may not be uber comfortable for the just average user, and yeah, that's pretty bung. But for that part, if we can replace that part, this magnificent unit would no doubt go on magnificently for, you know, just hundreds of cycles. Batteries these days are really not stressed by at least 300, typically even 500 full charge and discharge cycles. There is no reason why this shouldn't be able to have a magnificent service life for hundreds of cycles instead of 99 if we can replace this. Let's go. Come on, manufacturers, let's go. All right. Normally I do the RPM test with the piston in, but that's I'm not necessarily sacred to that. Let's get a reflective sticker on and see. Okay, I lied. I did put the piston back on since I have done the other test like that. So, all right, reflective sticker is on. So far, most punts have been between about 10,000 and 12,000. I reckon this will be similar. Let's see. Start them. 12,100 and so we'll call it 12,100. Pretty quick. It's not jumping out at me. So that was, in case that muffled or covered my voice, sorry, it was about 12,100. It's not immediately jumping out at me why this one has 7 screws to remove instead of 3. So all the other pumps so far, there's been basically a couple on the bottom and one on top, and then you slide the unit out of the chassis. The chassis is sealed at one end. When we open this end, which is screwed in separately, I'm not entirely sure what getting access to this by removing that end plate. I don't know what that does for us. There's not really anything we can do to improve our situation if something's gone wrong by just removing this, as opposed to just removing this with the 3 screws, which is normal for so far for every other pump. I think they could save 4 screws by just sealing this in as part of the unit. What's it? Is it for show and tell? How many people are removing their back end plates to show other friends their pump's electric motor? And I don't know. Yeah, what am I missing? It's not jumping out at me at the moment why we have 4 more screws to remove this end plate versus 3, like everyone else, and this is sealed, and then the pump comes out from the chassis. Mystery. Gotta love a mystery. All right, I got to get this uploaded and go. Out of time. So yeah, I don't think we'll get too much more. Like the battery will no doubt be what they say and so on. So nothing massively more to be gained by tearing it down further at the moment. I will measure up the piston and cylinder bore. Did a quick look. It looks very similar to the AS2 and others of that size. Right, yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you do, like and subscribe and share so you can help support the mini pump testing work. That would be amazing, and I will look forward to your comments and input as always, and hopefully get a chance to chat with you over the weekend before we head off next week. Right, thanks everybody, have a great one.